You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 565, our breakdown of the sixth episode of the Acolyte series, an episode entitled Teach, Corrupt. We'll get into the meanings of what that possibly could be outside of the obvious in just a few minutes, but really excited to talk about this episode because I thought it was one of the better episodes, and really, although it didn't kind of pick up, I thought we were going to have kind of like an adrenaline rush given we had the bloodbath in the last episode. It did enough to really kind of set the stage for the final two episodes. And so we'll talk about all that and more here in just a second. And with me, as always, is Jonesy to do that. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing well, and you're absolutely right. What's weird about this episode is this is more about what I expected the series to be as a whole.
Yeah.
And we're just getting to it in episode 6. So it's really, it's curious how that's working out, but I would say this was a really good one in some ways. I do have a major gripe to share, but it's actually pretty minor in the grand scheme of things. But this is pretty cool. I'm excited to do this tonight.
Yeah. And before we do, I know we want to say thank you to all of our Patreon members. Jonesy, I think you've got a roaring list here now to go through.
I do, and we never gripe about our storied Patreon members here. Special thanks to all of our now part of the tribe members: Raphael, Donnie, Mike, Lauren, Dante, Riss, Justin, Jackson, Sharkman, Dan, Daz, Isabella, Uncle Leon, Josh, Jacob, and Rita Reborn. And then, of course, our Delusions Grand members. Now, this is Rod Racing, CJ, Steve, and Daz. If you're curious about Patreon, cantinacast.com/Patreon. We'd love for you to come out. We're going to do usually shows on Sunday nights to follow up the Acolyte show during the week. So you've got things to look forward there too. So if you're curious about that, cantinacast.com/Patreon. Then we have a lot of people out in our live stream already, including Music Train, Sky, Steph, Alex, One versus CPU, Trent, and Jenny was able to join us tonight. So happy to see everyone there. If you're listening to this, thanks for the download. We'd love for you to come out and join us on the live stream, cantinacast.com/YouTube. And remember, we're giving away posters. We're giving away lots of cool stuff. So if you are wanting to be entered, make sure you leave us a question, like and subscribe to the channel. We're actually right near 1,600 subscribers. Albert, I don't know if you knew that.
No, I didn't. That's awesome.
Yeah, we're right on the cusp, just a few away. But Albert's holding up a wonderful poster. These came from the theaters at the Acolyte premiere at the theater that Albert was able to go to and snagged a few of these. And we are happy to give them away. We've given away, how many have we given away so far? Like 3, 4?
We've had 3 winners so far. We're going to have a 4th winner tonight.
Oh, well, that's a great segue into our latest winner. So, yeah, congratulations to Ippolito Caradona, who has been with us on the live streams here recently. So thank you so much. If you'll send us your information, either with an email to hello there at cantinacast.com, or if any of the social medias or whatever is most comfortable for you. If you're comfortable with sharing that with us, we'll be happy to get this in the mail and on its way to you. And Mike Fisto Fury just joined too, a Patreon member. So thanks for joining us, Mike.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks everybody for joining. Jenny, glad you could make it. And Ippolito, good, congratulations. See, it pays to play, man. Excited to send that out. So I will get the next batch of posters. I know our winner last week hasn't received it yet. I think they sent an email to us already, so we got that. So once I get Ippolito's, I'll get them tubed up and shipped out, and you guys will have those ready to go. So
that's how every good party starts, Albert. Tubing it up and shipping it out.
Yeah. Speaking of good parties, let's see. Just quickly, this weekend, we, again, like Jonesy mentioned, we'll have our Patreon show. That'll be at, I believe, 9 p.m., 10 p.m., somewhere on there. We haven't really figured out the whole weekend just yet. But we will have our Patreon show this weekend and kind of breaking down additional questions. So if you have questions, throw them in the chat tonight. After the show's aired, throw them down in the comment section. Whatever, that'll enter you into the poster giveaway. So long as you're a subscriber and you like this feed and all that other good stuff, right? But we'll do some Q&A on Sunday night, and we've got some other Easter egg type stuff that we'll break down as well. But the holiday, honestly, has gotten in the way of me trying to just plan anything. So we'll figure it out before now and then. But look forward to that on Sunday night. Okay. Let's do this. Let's get into our discussion of Teach and Corrupt. I said at the beginning, I thought it was a really great episode. I really enjoyed it, even though it wasn't as, adrenaline rushed as the last episode was. There was just something about it that allowed us to kind of just take a breath, sit down, reassess where we are in this series with the characters, the setting, and really setting that stage for what, first and foremost, what we've been teased about the whole season, which is this flashback, and really getting to understand the Rashomon effect and what the other side of a perspective is of that story. And then what it looks to be like episode 8, like I don't want to put any feelers out there in terms of what the length is going to be, but it feels like we have a lot of stuff to wrap up. And so I suspect that episode is going to be on the lengthier side of the series. I don't think we're going to get a 31-minute episode like we did with last night's episode. Yeah. But, it could be in the 40, maybe 50-minute range. But I'll kind of tee that up and let you kind of run with it, and I'll come back to my opening thoughts as well. What did you guys get?
Yeah, I mean, it is great to be able to sit with Chimere and to figure out what is going on with him, what the motivations are, what does he want with Osha? I think, did he know it was Osha? Did Soul know it was May? Of course, we got that figured out pretty fast, which I was really thankful for and kind of relieved it. And it didn't go. One of the things I've appreciated about this show, and Leslie Headland has said this in various interviews, including the one that came out today with Collider, is that she likes to kind of tell you it's coming and then get it out of the way and tell you and get to the good stuff. Right, not to belabor some of the points that she wants to make or some of the drivers behind it. Let's just kind of get it out there. There's one caveat to all of that that's not happening yet, but I think generally that's what we're getting. I appreciate.
She's been true to her word in that regard.
We're not slumbering on some of this stuff, which I think is a really great thing. So it was really cool to be able to sit there, kind of in the Sith lair. It's the first time we've really been able to sit with a Sith, really, except for like the opera scene, if you want to call that moment, but this is really unique territory for us, and I really like how that part has gone. And also,
he was making soup,
so it was just like Yoda. He's on his way. He's actually Yoda, like 100+ years later. So
yeah.
Surprise! This is what Yoda actually looks like. But a lot of good moments within all of this. We'll touch on a lot of this as we go through the stuff with May and Soul. Again, is I told you at the top of the show, I have a bit of a complaint. We were told basically 3 times in this episode, hey, I'm going to tell you what's going on from Soul again.
Yep, I know.
He's told us, I think, twice before. So I'm up to like a 5 count. There were 2 times that were more subtle, but I'm counting them 5 times now. Can we get on with it, please? But I mean, that's about my only major complaint, because the rest of this episode, exactly what I thought this series would be a little more methodical in how it goes, a little bit of, maybe not call it lore, but that backstory, like you were saying, that backstory about where's Chimere come from, what's Osha's play in all of this, what actually happened with the Jedi. Some of the things that we thought about her leaving the Order have turned out to be not quite realistic. And I think one of our listeners, I forgot to go grab their name, but I think they had questioned this earlier on, maybe a week or 2 ago, and it turns out they were actually presumably going to be right here. So really cool that we're still getting a few surprises, but there's nothing crazy that's turning the show on its head and making us like, well, that doesn't make any sense. So all these things are really working out, and we got a mystery planet, which is always fun to speculate on what that might be.
Yeah, which I think we know the answer to now. By the way, we'll be referencing that Collider article. So I don't know if we'll get a chance to throw it in the comments or even in the show notes for this, but if you've not had a chance, go out to Collider Magazine's website. Just do a search for the latest article by Maggie Lovett, who is a personal friend of ours. I'm like so proud to be able to say that. That article is a one-on-one interview with Leslie Headland. Like, gloves come off. She's just asking her straight up questions about what certain things mean, and she's just throwing truth bombs out there. And so we'll cover a lot of that, and we'll certainly try to make reference of when that article comes up. But that was very eye-opening for me in a lot of ways. And I said it's honestly such a good read, not because it's so hyper-focused on the Acolyte, but really a lot of the things they talk about thematically are just kind of general to Star Wars. And so you get the impression, or you come to fully understand and appreciate that both Maggie and Leslie Headland love this franchise. They know a crap ton about Star Wars, and it's just a good read beginning to end. So kudos to her for doing it. It's just wonderful to see her being so successful out there. So
that's such a great point with Leslie Headland. No matter what you think about this series or whatever, I really enjoy listening and reading her talk about Star Wars, because it's just, she is so steeped in it. She knows her stuff. She knows where she's going. She kind of knows the themes that she wants to be able to pull in and how they should fit together, and the integration that she has with the rest of the Lucasfilm team to make that a reality, and working with Pablo Hidalgo, like she talked about in this article. A lot of those things just work really well together. It's just really enjoyable to read someone be excited to work in Star Wars, and we get that a lot. But then to be able to pull very specific references that mean stuff to us in EU and Legends, and being able to bridge it all together, I think is a lot of fun. Like, I've not enjoyed reading articles as much as I have is with Leslie Headland. And it's interesting that they're doing these weekly on each episode to get that flavor and give that context, which I think while you and I have talked about whether they should have released all these shows maybe at once, that would have helped, streamline the story. At least we do have this kind of recap after the fact with the showrunner and the writer in many cases to actually say, this is what we were talking about. This is kind of generally where things might be going without giving too much away. So it's a unique perspective to have that week over week too.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think typically, at least in other shows, they were, I mean, with like the Mando, we had the Mando after show kind of thing, and that was in a studio. And I mean, they went all out on that, right? But even like Ahsoka, we got some of that too. But it is still happening. It's just happening with different news articles and different news outlets that they're taking the time to speak with. So. Did you have anything else as far as opening thoughts go?
No, yeah, please go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. So let me just start off with saying that Lee Jung-jae is just like killing it. My goodness. There's that one scene in this episode where he's not saying a single word, and I timed it. It's 47 seconds long, and he says so much with his actions, his eyes, the expressions. There's no word, again, no words at all being spoken. But he does so much to convey so much personal anguish and conflict. And you can see him like just kind of, we talk about the Jedi being able to wrestle with their emotions, like accepting the emotions and then letting them go and then moving on. And you can visually see that on his face when he's going through all that. So more on that later. But I just want to say, like, he continues to be, for me, the highlight of this series. And as much as I love Kamir now, I do feel like Amanda and the Osha May characters are kind of getting upstaged in a lot of ways, but
a little bit. Yeah.
At the same time, I mean, these guys are killing it, right? I mean, they're putting in these incredible performances, and so not to take anything away from her, I'm just saying like these guys are the ones that are standing out right now because of their performances. So I really enjoyed what he did there. A hotter episode. I have been fighting like this is like 2017 all over again for me. It's like back in the trenches with the Reylos and fighting the good fight of like, why do you care so much? Like, why are you so like uncomfortable with sexiness in Star Wars? And I get and trust me, I'm not going to argue anything tonight with anybody, but because I have been doing it all day long, and I've been doing it feels like for almost the better part of what, I guess, 7 years now.
Oh, I was
no, it's been like 7 years. It's never gone away.
Hardcore for the last 6 weeks, yeah. But
it's just been relentless. But I will say this: I keep coming back to it. I know we've talked about this on the show. Star Wars is just too big. And there's certain things that people get from Star Wars, and why anybody wants to crap on what someone gets from this franchise when it's being provided to them. And there's certainly an audience and a market for it. And if you really want to get in front of this and say, well, it's interfering, it's distracting, it's pulling me out, that's a personal thing, right? That's a very personal thing. These shows are not being written for you, that one person out there. As much as you'd love to think it's the case, it's not the case. And when I I promise, this will be the last thing I say. I put that out today a few times, and honestly over the last couple of weeks. And the argument I always get back is, well, you must not be a business owner. And when I ask, what the heck do you mean by that? They say, well, if you had a restaurant, are you gonna put out dishes out there that no one's going to like, kind of thing? And I'm like, you know how many times I've been to Taco Bell and I buy the same thing. I bought the same thing for the last like 20 years because I don't like the other stuff on that menu. But I understand that other people do, and we all love Taco Bell, right? And that's I'm being hyperbolic here, but at the same time, that's kind of where we're at this point. People seem to think that, okay, this can't be in Star Wars because I don't like it or it makes me feel uncomfortable, and I'm saying they get used to it. That's where it's been. It's going to always be that way going forward, and just learn to love that somebody else loves it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So that said, holy crap, it was kind of spicy here. We got a little spice meter going up in this one. I'm surprised I was thinking we should have had one hell of a fanfic ladies on for this one to kind of co-host for this one. But I did enjoy all that because at the same time, we talked about this in the last episode. It was one of the interviews where Leslie teased that she wanted to get into, quote, the seduction of the dark side, right? Coining the phrase that the quote from Kenobi about Anakin Skywalker. That in itself, she took it literally here. And if you really boil it down, if you really boil down the Sith and the Sith code, there's a lot of discourse and a lot of discussion around passion and emotions and what better way to do this. And this is not new. We've seen this many times before. Like Malgus and his Twi'lek girlfriend were like always in like first off, having like, sexual encounters.
In the throes of passion.
In the throes of passion, right? Oh. But she actually got Malgus to cry at the very end. I don't want to give too much away here in case anybody's interested, but I mean, this is like arguably one of the darkest Dark Lords of the Sith that we've ever had. And, he was like almost starting to feel like he was actually in love with her. And there was a lot of passion. There was a lot of sex going on. And at the end of the day, yeah, okay, fine. He did put a saber through her heart and killed her because, he felt it was a sign of weakness to have done that. But this isn't new, all I'm saying, to Star Wars, right? The seduction part of it, especially coming from the Sith. Now, if this had been a Jedi or something else and it was not Rael Everos, then I would say, okay, it's a little alien. It probably doesn't feel, right. But on the cusp of this, Temptation of the Force, many other examples that we've had now here recently where this is kind of it is a thing. It is a real life thing. And I'm actually happy to see that in Star Wars. Okay, now that I've said all that,
well, it serves a purpose too, right?
Yeah, it does.
I mean, it serves a purpose.
And we're going to get into the reasons. Sorry, we're going to get into the reasons.
Yeah, and that's why it's important, and that's why it's okay that it's there. I don't mean it like that, but like when you watch it, if you know the context and you do a little more, if you spend a few minutes with it, you understand that this is an important part of the story of why this type of scene is vital for what's going on here with Osha. And so, and it is not about, it's about desire and things like that. But like you said, we'll get into the details of it, but it serves a purpose. And I think that's the thing about the series is that a lot of the things that we're seeing, or most of the things that we're seeing, all have a specific purpose. And we have to look past it to see what that purpose may be, even though it might come here in an episode or two down the road.
Yeah. One Up versus CP says, I read Deceived like when SWTOR came out. That's the book I'm referencing right there. And Alex says, man, you've been fighting with people about Star Wars since 6th grade. You've also been blasphemous about Taco Bell for the same length of time. That is very true on both accounts. The other thing that I did like the parallels to, I guess, The Last Jedi, specifically around Octo and the planet. We've talked about, you and I were kind of going back and forth on, I think we're texting back and forth about the planet and whether or not it was Octo. And of course, that was all kind of debunked now in the article. We'll get to that here in just a second. But I did like the parallels, right? I mean, you had two apprentices, acolytes, whatever, kind of chasing around the master on the planet. They were witnessing their daily routines in some regards. And, you got one that was really saying, I need you, and the other one saying, I don't need you, kind of thing. And there's just a lot of, and even just a symbolism, a lot of those scenes. Like in my head, I want to put these together like I've done with other episodes and I'll put them out on social media at some point when I get the time. But there are some really cool parallels. So I did appreciate that. I did love it. You couple that with the Kylo Ren theme again that played in at the very end there when the helmet was being presented. There's just a lot of stuff that's going on here, a lot of great discussion points. But let's get into the breakdown of the episodes. I think some of the other stuff I have here is kind of smaller.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Vernestra Road. Don't worry, everyone.
Yeah, we'll talk about Vernestra Road.
Yeah, a little concerned about what's going on with Vern here. Yeah.
Oshamir is the official ship title for them. So
yeah, great.
That was nice that we got that one finally out of the way. Okay, the breakdown. All right, so we open up on this unknown planet, which before the article came out, you had texted me and said, do you think it's Octo? And I was like, I don't think it is Octo. Right. Then I said, if I had to make an argument, why would they call it the unknown planet, right? They just seems like, why wouldn't they just give us the name like they've given us every other name? What came out in that article with Maggie Lovett is it was an interesting perspective. I don't know if I necessarily like it. I don't necessarily hate it. I'm just kind of middle of the road. But the explanation, and I'm actually maybe even call BS on this because maybe she can't say just yet. Right. But what she said was, well, it's from the perspective of the Jedi, and to the Jedi, it's an unknown planet. And I thought, so since when have we been put in the perspective of the Jedi of this series? And I don't know. It's fine either way. I think the takeaway here really is that it is not Octo. Right. It is another planet. It seems to be, obviously rich in cortosis. We saw the vein there towards the very end. I know people have been talking about Baldemic as one of as it being the planet itself. I think that's probably it. But at the same time, why would you not
anywhere right now? Right.
Yeah. But why would you not just say the name of the planet? It doesn't really mean a whole lot to a lot of people, except those of us that are in the weeds on Star Wars or following social media all day long. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know that I really care one way or the other. I thought the Skura, the little like anteater / what was the other animal they used to breed that?
Oh gosh, I don't remember.
I forget it now. Neil Scanlon did that character design as well, but I thought they were super cute. Which again, love the cuteness stuff in Star Wars.
Right.
But any quick thoughts on the planet here? Just kind of get that out of the way since we're talking about it.
I was relieved it wasn't Octo, because I think it just when you have the Sith in your own backyard from a Jedi temple where you have caretakers and things like that, it just starts to feel like a little too intertwined and messy in some ways. And so I was glad that it was something different. When I messaged you, it was very much coming from, this is before the article came out too. It was very much of it. I could understand what unknown. I was actually talking with Mike Rondo a lot about this too. It makes sense where it's unknown because you don't like that. You want to just make sure you want to make the audience aware that the Jedi don't have this place mapped out at all. They don't know where it is. They don't know the importance of it, if there is any. You know, the Sith truly are in hiding and not in a place that is readily discoverable by the Jedi. And I think that gets that point across, right? And it's not very subtle, but let's be honest, there's not a lot subtle about this series at oftentimes, right? So it's kind of par for the course, and I'm okay with that. I actually appreciate that on many levels. So I'm glad this isn't that. I do strongly believe it's probably Valdemnik or something very close to that, because that maps up with Legends. It maps up with Tenebris and Plagueis as well. So you have clear connections and lines to be able to get us into that. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but you know, so I like that we did have unknown and that it's not described for us, but we could speculate on this one. I think this is a good use of that. I'm with you. I think the article's a little bit BS in this one. She just can't say quite yet. Maybe they won't say it at all, but it kind of, we know that she's had to skirt around some things in the past. That's what you do if you don't want to give things away. Yeah, I can't fault you for that at all, but
yeah,
I'm hoping they do at least name it. I think that would be fun. And depending on if there's any final reveals at the end of the series, of course, or at the end of the season, then yeah, that would certainly tie into that pretty closely. Potentially.
Hey, I meant to talk about the titles. Devin Rivers in the chat says, does anyone give any deep thoughts on the titles of each episode and their meanings for the show as a whole? I mean, we've certainly spent some time already on pretty much all the titles, I think, and kind of talked about what it potentially could mean. I think in most instances, especially with Star Wars, this is not common, or I guess not common to just, or specific to Acolyte, but in just Star Wars, like the Bad Batch did this a lot. More recently here, but you know, the titles take on multiple meanings. And I think when you look at the title of this one, Teach, Corrupt, it's very easy to say, okay, well, Teach is soul and the corruption is really coming from Khmer. But any chance that we'll get kind of another role reversal where, you know, corruption is coming from soul, or you learn more about the corruption side that soul had, not necessarily that going forward, and you're going to learn more about, I guess, the teaching side of Khmer, if that's even possible. Do you think this is pretty straightforward? Do you think they'll do a way to flip that somehow?
I think this one could be viewed both ways, because I think in our earlier breakdowns, we were talking about, is it May and Osha? May and Osha, each title is kind of, one is one and one's the other, and they're the same one in each place. You know, so May could be the one being taught, and like you said, Osha could be the one being corrupted. You could kind of inverse that a little bit. The corruption side on the May part is a little harder to get to, but you could be that you're teaching Osha and opening her eyes to some new things here. So I think there's definitely correlations to that. And I'm with you. I think on this one, you do have that inverse relationship here. You could apply this to May and Osha quite literally, but then you could also almost flip the roles here for Soul and for Khmer and be able to tell that, you know, these are situations, maybe not what they're doing, and partially what they're doing, but that corruption side of what has been corrupting and eating away at Soul for 16 years about the events on Brendok and not coming clean. And what has that done to him and his soul in some kind of ways? And then what has Khmer had to do to teach himself to pull him out of all of that stuff? So he's on the upswing where Soul's kind of on the downswing part of that too. And you can interpret this a lot of different ways. I think that's what's great about some of these titles when you have, you know, the opposites, is that you can apply them in many different ways. I think that's part of the fun. And of course, we've had a great time doing that too.
Yep. All right, let's talk about let's get into the episode now. Okay, so Osha wakes, which I mean, we've been talking about this since the first episode. Honestly, you know, she keeps waking up at different moments. Nothing's changed her. It's fun. She wakes up. She's obviously on this planet. She sees the clothes there. She sees May's boots, which she puts on a little bit later, and she picks up the dagger. By the way, that at the very beginning, maybe this is my only gripe. I forgot to mention this. At the very beginning, it was kind of neat to watch both of them have daggers in their hands, both going after, you know, these masters that they were with now, right. Role reversal kind of thing. But at the same time, like, I was 100% in on May saying, like, I don't need to do this anymore, right? Osha's alive and I don't need to kill Jedi. And yet she was trying to kill soul, or at least she was thinking about it. And so I haven't even had a chance to reconcile that or try to understand it. I think it makes narratively, it's cool. It's visually, it's kind of cool because you get to see them both holding the daggers and kind of in that same position, stalking those masters. But I don't know. I guess I was in the boat that she was over that. So maybe she isn't over that. I don't know. That doesn't, I don't know. I'm having a hard time reconciling that one.
Well, I think May is still in the mode of get away too, right? So if she can kill Soul, she takes over the ship. She doesn't know that Basil is there.
So nothing personal. It's just I need to get to.
I think at this point, yeah, take over the ship and try to go rescue her sister from the Sith Lord, and understanding there that there is still something worth fighting for, but it doesn't include the Jedi, and might as well off them. But it's nothing, like I said, I don't know that it's anything personal at this point,
yeah,
or at least at that moment. It becomes more personal as the episode goes on. I think this is something where it's also an old habit. She's been going down this road. His back is turned to her. Why not just go ahead and finish this off what she had started?
Yeah. So old habits die hard.
Potentially
motivations die hard, kind of thing. Okay, I'll buy it. I will buy that. Okay, so we also learned that she's on this island. She can see the ship out there. We come back to, and she's seething at this point. She's seething as she sees Khmer kind of strolling very nonchalantly down the shore looking for seashells or whatever he does. And we flip over. We go back to Khofar, and we're playing side. This is where they take off Soul and May, and he calls in an emergency code 0. So he's in shock. I mean, you can see it all over his face. Yeah. He's still clearly not thinking the right way. A lot has happened. I think this leads into, I mean, we'll discuss this. A lot of people have given grief like, oh, how did he not know that was May? I still think he did. And it wasn't, when we get to the moment, I'll talk about when I think it is that he finally knows that it's not Osha and he knows that it's May, because I think it was clear there. I don't believe that Basil told him. Like, Basil's on the trail, but I could be wrong. I mean, I've seen it 3 times, but I don't remember a scene that they got together and said, oh, thanks for letting me know, Basil and Pip. That's not what happened. And I'll explain when it happens in case anybody missed it, okay? But, May's walking through the ship, which was kind of neat to see because she was getting all these visuals and remembering all these memories were kind of rushing back into her. You could hear in the background Nadara saying, May, this is your test. You must divine what images appear on the testing screen. Then she says, what do you want me to do? And then Soul says, I must speak to Master Vernestra. I don't remember that line originally. And I don't know if we're going to hear that line maybe in the flashback that's coming up, but there was some kind of memory that she had of that being said to her. And I don't understand why, but any weird tinfoil hat theories as to why that would have happened?
No, I mean, unless we're going to start hearing I don't know, maybe he detected something with her, or maybe just the scenario they need to report. I don't know why they would report back in between the kids, or as you've interviewed one and you're waiting to interview the other one. So this is one we're going to have to wait and see what exactly comes out of this, because I'm not really sure. I mean, we know that Vernestra was maybe against training them already, because maybe, I don't know, because of the age thing, because we don't know if that's necessarily a limitation quite yet. But no, I'm not really going to go out on a limb here on speculate on this one, because I really don't have any idea.
Yeah, well, I am. I think, I mean, I do wonder if at some point during the testing process, they discovered something that was a little unsettling, a little troubling. And like, hey, this is more than just Force sensitives. This could be a dyad. I know we kind of dismissed that already. Given the article that just came out, it's probably back on the table and worth talking about more, even more so. More on that later. But I do wonder if at some point they detected something that was unsettling, and before, she may overheard him say, I must speak to Master Vernestra about this, because, whoa, this is more than we asked for. We don't know, we got something here that we weren't expecting to get, kind of thing. So again, I don't want to go too far and say dyad, but it does sound like there was news upon the testing that maybe gave him that reason to say that. So either way.
Well, I think the article is relevant to like apply here if you're going to go down that path, because I think what Leslie Headland was saying is that the Jedi don't necessarily have terms for everything quite yet.
Right.
And I think this makes sense. So the Sith, they do a lot of research. They look for artifacts. They look for holocrons. They consume knowledge. As much as the Jedi use the Force for knowledge and defense, the Sith crave knowledge, because knowledge really truly is power to them in many ways. And they know what a dyad is. They know what these terms mean and the potential opportunities of them, where the Jedi struggle a bit with that because they suppress so many of that knowledge. It gets lost over time. Maybe they just put it away. Maybe only a select few have access to it. So I think things like that, and that was basically what I was considering was a possibility. If he's starting to identify something, But what would he identify just based on a conversation or maybe even midichlorian count? Maybe the midichlorian count would have been really high, but I don't know what the specific thing that would have tipped him off one way or the other would have been.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably exactly right. I mean, and again, not to go too crazy into the theories again, but one of the theories we threw out there was, at some point, if you want to loop back Khmer and maybe his master, then they could potentially have been staking out the witches as well because they were aware of something going on. I mean, like you said, they're very interested in stuff like the dyad. For the Jedi, it's like, no, let's not talk about it. Let's bury that, put it away. Nobody bring that up again. Like, let's just stick to our Force, katas, and all that stuff.
Well, it's myth. Yeah, it's myth and legend, and there's no real truth to that kind of stuff. This hasn't happened, supposedly hasn't happened in generations or millennia or whatever it might be. Yeah.
Right. So let's not talk about it. Let's not think about it. Whereas the Sith are like, oh, hell no. If there's a dyad on that planet, let's go check it out, right? And it could be a logical explanation. Again, it's another theory we've been throwing out there, but it could be a logical explanation as to how Khmer is privy to a lot of what happened. Maybe he was there with his master. Maybe his master was like, holy crap, that's a dyad. I don't need you, kid. Stabs in the back, leaves him for dead kind of thing. And thinking that I'm going to, I don't know. I'll take the kids or something, whatever the case is. I don't want to start speculating too much because I just don't know. But it certainly begs a question about whether or not they are truly a dyad, given this particular comment, and then Leslie Headland almost confirming that it's not out of the realm of possibility. They may not call it a dyad, like you said, because it's the Jedi, and they may not even know what they have on their hands, but the Sith do. They're very well aware what this stuff is. Yeah,
and we know we're going to leave this series with some open-ended questions that won't be critical, but will be fun to debate for a while, probably.
Yeah. Sol finally tries to get the report in. Of course, communication's down. It's going to only mean one thing. I don't have the sound pulled up right now, but that's likely an invasion of sorts. But he says they were ambushed. Someone knew they were coming, and he feels like there's a much larger threat here than we anticipated. So I don't know how much of that gets through to him. He tells May to take the wheel, which, oh my God, stop complaining about saying the wheel in Star Wars. But he says, take the wheel. I've been fighting people about that one today too. And then while that's going on, I guess May she's about to kill him, and he finally says, take the wheel. And she takes over and does what she needs to do. And that's when he goes downstairs. And
I like that she steps right in and actually almost feels comfortable. Like she's of use and like, okay, maybe this isn't so bad. I mean, it was a shift from like, it was a shift from like, I'm about to kill you to, oh crap, you're going to give me responsibility. You're going to give me something like you're going to trust me to do this.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and this is where I thought May have started to have a slight shift in her way of thinking, or at least doubt starting to creep in about whether they're as bad as she's made them out to be.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's how over the last few years or however long she's been with Khmer, I mean, I don't know what that relationship was like, but he never showed her his face, number one. But how many times did he empower her or trust her? And out of, sincereness, it's probably been alien to her for some time.
Absolutely.
So anyways, but he goes down here, and then we get that 45 seconds of him just kind of struggling with everything that's going on, right? He's still in shock. And I would not, at this point, to be fair, I don't expect Sol to have, beyond the case of May being Osha or Osha being May, however you want to look at that, right? He's still dealing with a lot of emotions, clearly, by this scene. He's got a lot on his mind. There's a lot going on. He literally left those dead bodies back behind that. I don't think he was okay with that. We talked about that. So I don't suspect that he would be on to anything at this point. It's not until after this scene here, because he's still got all these emotions. He compartmentalizes them. He deals with them, and he decides that he's just going to move on with stuff, which is what he does. And again, I just love that whole expression on his face. If you watch closely, you can see him go through those range of emotions, take one big deep breath, hold it in, contend with it, and then I've got to move on and get on with the mission kind of thing. So
yeah, we can sit here and debate around whether that's enough time to really grieve and go through it all, but also there's a mission and there's things at stake that you have to move beyond. And I think we've heard this from the Jedi, the prequels. There will be time to grieve later. We have to focus on what's right in front of us in this moment. I think that's what Sol is doing. So it was good that we had this moment, though, in private, and we actually see a Jedi go through these emotions in some capacity, because this is pretty foreign. Like, we don't really have this glimpse very often into what's going on. Usually it'll get suppressed and moved on for days and days or weeks and weeks or months, and just something replaces the time that you would take to actually do it, or they fall into a really low pit of despair rather than trying to actually process. So this was a I think it was a kind of an intimate moment for Soul in that way. And again, you'd said at the top of the show, Lee Jung Jae really kind of takes you through that roller coaster of emotion and actually expressing it in some ways that was really refreshing to see from a Jedi, but also got to get back to work.
Yeah. I mean, just give the guy the Emmy at this point. So Basil, by the way, Basil and Pip, there's this really quick scene there. When you see Basil kind of huffing around, he's smelling, he can already tell that that's not May, or not Osha, I should say. But he pulls out Pip and he finds a little charging station to pop him back into. Thank God for visual aids, because I don't know what he would have done had he not. Did you see the visual aid in the background on the wall?
Yeah,
he's like, oh, okay, yeah, I can line up those two together because they're both green.
It's like the first time an American goes to Europe trying to plug something in the wall. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, he's able to kind of put him on a charger there. Okay, we go back to the unknown planet, and we get more of Khamir's routine. You know, he knows Osha is following him. She has that dagger in his hand, slowly kind of walking, just checking out, trying to figure herself out, trying to assess the situation that she's suddenly found herself in. He heads over to take his bath. And all of this is like straight. I mean, this is straight seduction, right? Seduction of the dark side, playing into those emotions. You know, and I talked about Malgus and Daru, and I've already kind of got on my soapbox about this already. But one of the things that we do notice is he's got that scar on his back. Let's just talk about the scar now, because it does come up a few times. She doesn't really probe the question until towards the very end about, you know, where did you get that scar? But I guess just, do you feel like this is something from, you know, Force lightning? Is it, I know people have speculated that it's, you know, he's Vernestra Row's Acolyte or Padawan, which I just have a hard time dealing with right now. Like that's the other one, so it's really struggling with.
For those listening, Albert is rubbing his eyes and trying not to give in to.
Look, man, I don't hate the idea. Okay, if it turns out to be the case, well, man, we've got all kinds of skeletons that we're gonna have to sort through here in the next 100 years, because that is not the Vernestra role we're at. You and I have said this many times. We said this towards the beginning of the show, even probably I think in our final hype show before the show series premiered. Like, if that turns out to be the case and she turns out to be the big bad, or she turns out to be corrupt or more corrupt than we suspect, so be it. Like, I'm not going to sit here and cry about it. I don't think it's possible right now, given the character that we have. I mean, my God, the ship that she took off in, that was named the Camtros, after Imri Camtros, her Padawan. So, like, what Sith Lord or what, you know, evil person is out there naming its ship after something like that? I think there's more here. And I don't want to exclude the fact that didn't come from her. Like, that could be a very possible situation, since, you know, it looks kind of spiraled, and we got to see the whip in this episode. But, you know, this wouldn't be the first time in this series that we've been led down astray, and there's red herrings all over the place from Leslie Headland. So I guess your thoughts on the scar and potential origin of that.
Yeah, and this is another one I talked to Mike Rondo about, because, of course, Mike's really into philosophy. And I think the one thing that Mike and I, it was a really good part of the conversation of all of the other stuff that goes with talking to Mike Rondo. But I think one of the really interesting parts is about truths and facts, right? And when we talk about the Sith, when people are acutely aware that the Sith seem to tell the truth more often than the Jedi, but they're really just sharing certain facts that prove the perspective that they want you, that serve their purpose and want you to see. They don't give you everything that you want in order to actually determine what you would determine either true fact or even what the general best version of the truth should be. And Khimir does seem a little bit sketchy and a little bit, he's skirting the edges about this conversation. So it could be that it's a painful memory. It's something that he draws pain and draws anger and draws, you know, that pain from. And that could be very well the case. Or it could be something where he can't tell the whole truth, because the whole truth isn't necessarily going to, something that's going to serve his purpose and not build empathy for the Jedi, or paint him in a negative light that he did something that either wasn't supposed to, or that he drew the ire in a way that it was warranted in some way, that would deter Osha from joining his cause and being able to see the way that he wants her to see, right? So we have to go through the perspective that Khimir wants to convince Osha to join him. He wants companionship. He wants an acolyte. He wants this. He wants more power, right? It's all in the pursuit of power and the things that Khimir wants, not necessarily what's in the betterment for Osha in any kind of way. Now, whether it's Vernestra Row or not, I mean, it is a curious scar. It could be Force lightning. It does look like a light whip. Could definitely be something that could cause some of that. And is it coincidence that we see the scar and we see the light whip in the same episode? No, that is not a coincidence, right? That seems to be very intentional, whether to mislead us or give us an indication of what's to come.
Yeah.
I got to be honest with you, Albert. We've been told things and we've been shown things. How often have we not gotten the things that were exactly what they showed us?
Yeah.
We've had this conversation a number of times. That does present a lot of conflicting emotions about Vernestra Rowe based on what we know about her in her youth and our perspective of her and how much we really put her up on a pedestal in many ways. And so then this is really difficult to even entertain those ideas with Vernestra that she'd be possible, that she'd be capable of doing something like this. But we also, again, even if it's true, do we understand, or even if it's factual that she was responsible for it, we don't know the truth and the story behind it. And that's part of why we have to see the rest of the series before we start making harsh judgments on some of this.
Yeah, no, I agree. And more on, we'll continue to come back to this, honestly, this conversation, because there are other moments in here where it certainly feels appropriate to do so. He leaves the lightsaber out. I mean, clearly leaves it out for her. I mean, again, this is all just part, and it's about empowerment, right? He's trying to make her feel empowered. He's also making himself, and this is the one thing that I don't want to say I'm struggling with, but I'm getting more and more on the side of, okay, yeah, he is a Sith Lord, but I'm actually starting to wonder if he really is being completely honest and truthful, and it may not be coming from a very selfish perspective. I say that only because of the article, because of what the Collider article with Maggie, where she does talk about he's making himself very vulnerable to the extent of which he doesn't really have to do so, but he is anyways. And I think just to go back to Reylo, the one thing that was always, I think, bothered people that were about Reylo, even if you were a fan of it, I think it bothered people because it didn't feel sincere, right? You always knew, even in that moment when Kylo Ren, Ben Solo, whoever that was very vulnerable and says, please, when he's just pleading to her to please join me, I need some kind of companionship. You knew it was coming from a place of like power and selfishness still, right? And that's why she's like, oh God, please don't do this. This is ridiculous kind of thing, right? That was her response. She was reading that 100%, and we as the audience were reading that 100%. The difference between that and this one is I'm not getting that same feeling. I'm getting the feeling that he is making himself vulnerable and he is being very truthful about things, and that's super dangerous. And I don't think, I think for Osha is honestly, if he took the same approach that Kylo did during that, I think she would push back like Rey did, be like, no, you're not going to corrupt me kind of thing. And she even says as much at some point, but eventually she does give in. And I think it's because she's picking up like, okay, this guy is being very vulnerable. He is being very honest and not sensing that there could be some kind of selfish corruption there, or, I guess I'll just leave it at that. Selfish corruption. So again, we'll talk about this as we continue to kind of break this down. But making himself vulnerable physically by taking off his clothing, he leaves a lightsaber out there for her to take, and suddenly now she has the weapon. She's in power. You could look at that as empowering at the same time, disarming himself, literally disarming himself and saying like, I've got nothing here. If you want to kill me, go right ahead. But this is how much I need you. This is how much I want you. That kind of thing. But then when she's holding the lightsaber, he tells her like, how does it feel? Right? He's kind of propping her up. Feels good to have one in your hand again, right? You used to be something great, and now you're not because the Jedi took that away from you, or you took it away from yourself, at least at this point, kind of thing. And suddenly, and then he does kind of put her down, maybe not necessarily a little bit. It's kind of constructive criticism about prop up your arm a little bit, or whatever he'd said. What does he say? I assume you didn't keep your own lightsaber. Or he talks about that. Well, says, hey, you got your lightsaber taken away.
Raise your other elbow. It's easier for defense. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so he's just kind of feeding into that. And it's reaffirmation that, okay, like, hey, maybe I wasn't a bad Jedi. I still got it. I still have my stance. I'm a threat kind of thing. And then he says, on his way out, he says, if you're not going to join me, I'd like to put my clothes back on. Again, making himself very vulnerable. Now he says, you're wondering if it's honorable to kill me like this. Heat of the battle, it's justified, but a few hours later, it's vengeance. And he's really challenging the beliefs of the Jedi at this point. Like, what is the difference at this point? And he's not wrong, all right? Like, why, there's nothing wrong, just do it kind of thing. I think this came up in the article as well. Like, you might as well. Like, no one's around. No one's going to judge you for doing this. Go ahead. You can just kill me right now. That's a very different way to think about things, especially, as he says a little bit later, you're still coming from the mindset of a Jedi.
Yeah, give me what I deserve, right?
Right.
Distribute punishment. Again, it is all in his service, by the way. All of these things are for his own intent. But what he's doing, though, is very much trying to paint. These are all the things that the Jedi deprived you of and that you deprive yourself of in the service of the Jedi. This is what it looks like to have a lesson and to be taught by someone who's going to take all of those rules and say they don't apply, and to be able to give you the options of make your own choice, make your own decisions, do this as a, truly do this as a pair. He says a little bit later on, the relationship between master and pupil is very special. You had it with a father figure before, what might that look like with him, right? And then clearly suggestive, clearly seductive, given all of the events that we've seen up to that moment as well. But I like this. This is the right style, though, for him, too, of, giving her that taste, letting her touch the lightsaber, knowing that she does miss it. It is something that evokes a lot of emotion and a lot of feelings, the things that she's not experienced in a while, and to be able to acknowledge and maybe admit openly that, yeah, she the choice that she made, and we'll talk about whether she made it or not, did it feel like it's the right answer? Was that the right solution? Does she regret it? Does she have animosity about the situation and the circumstances of whatever it was? And of course, does she have any regret and retribution that's been lingering that she continues to suppress as well? So this is this is what the Sith do, right? They just open your world and say, look, here are all the things you didn't have. What if you had them? Like, what could you do with all of this? How does this make you feel?
Mm-hmm.
And don't limit yourself to what feelings you're going to use to describe it. Just feel and just tell me what it is. And again, we learn more. We have another Force lesson here in just a little bit. He's just doling out he's Luke Skywalker, right? He's lesson number 1, but from the completely inverse side of all of that with what Luke did with Rey. And so it's a great kind of parallel or dichotomy here of, the opposite side of what we had on Nocto here on this unknown planet.
And I don't know that he knew this, but if you think about Soul and Yord wouldn't give her anything. They gave her they were reluctant to even give her a stun blaster. And here he is going, yeah, take the lightsaber. You're worthy of it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and the truth bombs he drops with Yord and with Jecki later on were just harsh. I mean, they were harsh.
Not as harsh
realities.
as seeing their dead bodies briefly.
Not as harsh as that, but again, he very matter of fact in some ways, though, which was really, again, it pisses her off, but at the same time, she can't really argue with it, though.
Yeah. So he just said, you're wondering if it's honorable to kill me. He then follows that up with, now you're wondering how I can read your mind, which you can't. He says, I can't. Not exactly. He says, your angers betray your thoughts, which is an interesting look at be
Vader.
Mindful of your thoughts.
Yeah, Vader and Luke,
right? Your thoughts betray you, Father, right? So we've gotten that. So that was a nice little callback there. And then, of course, she asks, why is she there? She says that, hey, you've got a weapon. You can stay if you want, or you can get out if you want, but you're going to have to leave soon because, there's tides coming in kind of thing. There's a mix of kind of, again, honesty and also deception that's still going on here that kind of bleeds into this whole seduction thing. She then asks, did you kill Saul? She says, no. Did you kill May? No. But he looks at this a little bit dismayed and he says, interesting that you thought about him first, though.
Right.
What was your take on that?
Well, he follows up exactly where I took it. She's worried about Dad, right? She clearly has a much stronger relationship with Soul and misses what that relationship meant to her coming out of her, that 8-year-old Brendock scenario, and blaming May that she's disassociated with May. She's put barriers in place with May to where, yes, she cares about her, she's curious, but Soul is clearly the most important person to her because that's the only real bedrock she's had probably in her entire life since her mother's, right? And even then, she didn't feel like she fit in. So I think it makes a lot of sense that she would ask about Soul, and clearly she was wanting to. He'd promised some things too, right? Of getting the truth, right? What's the full story going to be? These ideas that were coming about but never got shared because things kept getting in the way. Very frustrating, in my opinion. But I can imagine how frustrating it is for Osha to know the truth is out there, but you just can't get to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think those are the things, though, and he's just trying to accentuate that. Like, oh, that's curious. Like, you have such a relationship with your dad. That's kind of weird, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, it's now I feel like Ed or Fred all of a sudden, like with the way. But no, but yeah, I think it's something like that, and being able to associate that with Master and Apprentice and how they create a special bond.
Yeah,
and being able to say, like, what if you had that with somebody else where you didn't have all of the baggage that goes with it? You could actually be open and express yourself and to be
Mhm.
able to look at these things in different perspectives.
Yep. No, you nailed it. That's exactly what that whole last conversation was about, master and pupil. And then he just kind of walks away, drops the microphone, walks away.
And
We
again, I
go,
like that he's
yeah.
giving her the option to leave and just do whatever. Like, this is what freedom looks like.
Mhm.
You have freedom, and he lays it out really, plainly here in just a few minutes, or I guess maybe towards the end of the episode, but he's just, if you leave, and I think he would have let her. I don't think he would have killed her. Do you?
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah.
I think he would have left her, allowed her to leave. I don't know what that would have looked like, but I don't. At the same time, like I don't know that she would have been able to swim across that. I mean, it might have been like a no-win situation kind of thing.
Right. But still, she had the choice, and her decision was more along the lines of, I'm more likely, it seems like I'm more likely to get some answers that I've been wanting for a very long time from this morally questionable character, if, to give him the benefit of the doubt in that front, but I'm still more likely to get something there. And there is something here that I need, and I need to go and follow through and see where this goes.
Yeah. Alex with the Lost reference. All the best cowboys have daddy issues. Rita Reborn's another Lost fan, so he'll probably get that one. Okay. We go back to the Khofar system. This is where May is getting ready. She gets a ship ready I think they dock it. It's ready to go out into hyperspace whenever he's ready to blast off. And this is where Sol comes in, and he hugs May, and he says, "You saved us, Osha. You saved me. That man, he corrupted your sister. He pushed me to a place." He says, "I'm sorry. It's time to make things right. It's time for me to face the High Council to tell him everything." And she says, "Everything? Like, I know stuff that you should be telling, but haven't said," at least to her suspicion. And I think this is where he was tipped off that this was not Osha. When he put her arms around her, I think he was being sincere. I think at this point he still thought that was Osha. But at some point when he connected with her, there was something not right there.
It was a very awkward hug.
It was. It
After
became
a
awkward
moment.
real quick. And she wasn't very receptive. Like Osha would have done something very differently. And I think that's where he's like, wait a second, what's different about this situation here?
Right.
So that's the moment there. So give Sol the benefit of the doubt. It wasn't all Basil. It wasn't even Basil. Basil certainly was aware of it, and Pip was probably aware of it. And their whole plan was to squirt her with oil or whatever. But that's not where Sol got the sense that was not Osha.
Right.
Okay, we go to Coruscant, the Jedi Temple, and we get Vernestra Rowe talking to, by the way, Senator Chewant, which that is for that race. I forget the names. I forget the name, but that's the Elo Nasty, all the Beastie Boy titles.
Right.
This is So What You Want, what you want from the Beastie Boys. I thought the first name was going to be Soa. I put that out there this morning on social media. And then I went out to Wikipedia, and somebody had already updated it with the official name, which I guess, I don't know where it came from. Maybe it was in the credits. I don't know.
I think it came from the StarWars.com posted their behind the scenes stuff.
Oh, did they? Okay,
Yeah.
And they gave you the name of it.
Yeah, I believe so.
All right. Bummer. I was hoping I'd get credit for naming giving the first name of Soa.
You win some, you lose some.
Yeah, I know.
Beastie Boys, you're always winning, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Nice little Easter egg. Nice to see that they're continuing on with the Beastie Boys name references there. But he talks about how the Jedi, this is kind of disturbing. He talks about how the Jedi are being asked to be externally reviewed, which like, why is the Senate or, the Republic wanting to do an internal investigation of sorts or review of the Jedi Council? Like, that just kind of shows you how far they've become intertwined, like somehow they've got reach into what the Jedi Order are doing. But that says a lot in itself. And you can see now where at least Vernestra is like, okay, yeah, I don't like that. I think where she gets burned is he's like, hey, you got nothing to worry about, right? The Jedi are always transparent with the Senate. And I'm like, oh, Lord, that's not going to go well. Because you can see it all over her face. Is like, oh, man, I've been holding this lie in for a while. That's not going to go well. And so she doesn't want that external review. On top of all that, she's getting this report from Mog, who says that they got a distress call from Sol. The whole team was wiped out. She wants them back on comms immediately. And so she's going to do what, any leader in a compromised position would do like this and say like, all right, I'm inserting myself. I'm taking over this situation because I want to know what's going on. But at the same time, like I have to make sure that I'm in control and this thing doesn't get out any further because this could spell doom, especially on the heels of what's going on here with the Senate and their kind of investigation.
Yeah, this was important to recap from what the political adversaries that they talked about in the first couple of episodes that they were concerned about.
Yeah.
Is that there are people who want to put more oversight over the Jedi. They feel they have too much autonomy. They can go do whatever they want. There's no government. For those familiar with the EU, this is what Luke Skywalker, after the New Jedi Order, was also experiencing with the New Republic. They wanted to integrate. They wanted to kind of go back to the old ways where the Jedi and the Republic they were basically a police force that they would administer, but they would control. There's always going to be people, I think, that believe that the Jedi should fall under a hierarchy, under the Republic, and be at their whim rather than an autonomous force that, well, no pun intended, that is following the Force and that their own, basically their own belief system of what they believe they should be involved with, following the living Force, if we were to put that term to it, rather than following a political body with their own interests. As good as the Republic may be in any given time frame, they do have their own interests that are not always aligned with the betterment of the people, and from a Jedi perspective, the living Force certainly at odds with that many times, because their interest might be, well, we have to save these planets because they have Bacta, but we're not going to go and address these planets because they're Tatooine, and nothing important ever happens on Tatooine. So
yeah,
right.
I mean, you say that, but
right.
But
again, yeah,
no,
you apply
I know.
it to
I'm
Outer
just
Rim
joking.
or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but I mean, you apply it to Outer Rim or whatever, and it just makes sense. And the Jedi should be above and outside of all of that. And so you see some of this. And again, is there something with Brendock that is surfacing over time, or another situation to where this senator feels it's necessary to open a committee to explore some of this, to legitimize the claims and to delegitimize the Jedi and their place in the galaxy? And again, have the Sith already started to infiltrate the Senate in some way? Is another leading question you could start to ask too.
Yeah, it's certainly a pressure cooker, for lack of a better term, going on there right now.
Yep.
We go to the unknown planet, and this is where we're picking up with May and Osha and Kamira's conversation. But she says, "You speak as if you were a Jedi," and he says, "I was a long time ago." It was a really long time ago when she pressed on that.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know what to believe here. Like, again, I feel like he is being open and honest, and if I'm going to stick to that, then he was. I think the question, I think you and I talked about this on the last Q&A for Patreon about whether or not he was a Padawan. I think we kind of dismissed the idea that he was Sol's son, because, again, going back to that whole where he says, "You don't recognize me" kind of thing, and we thought, okay, there's definitely more there. Could he have been a Padawan? I think we didn't rule it out, but I think we did say where we could poke holes in that is like, why wouldn't he have recognized him? Osha seemed like she would have, like she immediately said, "I don't recognize you," kind of thing. So it wasn't unrealistic for her to think that she would be able to know one Padawan out of literally probably thousands at this time. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think he's being honest here? Do you think this is just telling her what she wants to hear so we can get on that same level? Like, hey, we both were Padawans. Our masters dumped us. It's just you and me. Let's go rule the galaxy together as lover and lover. I don't know. What do you think?
I think there's an element of truth to this, to be honest with you. I think when we get the correlation to the sensory deprivation of the helmet and equating that to the younglings, that's kind of like the smoking gun a little bit, because we know that Sol teaches the younglings, and it's his warmest opportunity to be able to do this. But if he's been doing this for a long time, or a really long time, a lot of those names and the candidates and the initiates or the younglings or whatever, they all maybe kind of come and go in your memory, and people change a lot over the years if they're 4 or 5 years old, whatever it might be. And so it could be that Chimera actually was in the temple, did at least go to a class under Sol and the tutelage of Sol, much like all of the younglings went under Yoda in the prequel era, right? They all kind of started there in a group in some ways. So I think this has probably got some level of truth to it, that it's not a lie. It's he really was in these classes, and Sol may not remember him, maybe went under a different name, things like that. So they won't recognize him in that way. But I think there's something here. I think this is probably legitimate. And whether he flunked out or whether he was kicked out or whatever it might be, I'm sure we'll find more out about that one. But I think this is one that we could probably say he's telling some semblance of the truth on.
Yeah, I'm as reluctant as I am. Again, given the article that came out and some of the other signs now, it feels like, yeah, I guess he is. I just don't know timeline where that lands. Like I wasn't gonna go as far as to say that, he's somehow been able to preserve his life, and he's been around for 200 years.
There have been some theories floating around about that too, that this isn't his real face, or he's using the dark side to preserve his youthfulness or something like that.
Yeah.
Those all, I think, probably plausible, I think, but are they realistic with what we've seen and what we've been told? Again, I think we have to keep going back to this is what they've shown us, and here's what they're saying to us, probably should believe a large portion of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess the follow-up question is then whether or not he was on Brendock. I think you and I threw that theory out there. I think it was in the Patreon Q&A, at least that, maybe he was. And I don't remember who we tagged him under as far as like what master. I forget now. I'll have to go back and listen to that. But I don't know. It was that one again. It was just really it was getting very difficult and getting too complex to kind of run through mental gymnastics and to make that happen. But I mean, at this point, I guess that's another possibility. I mean, it would certainly explain why he was privy to the information that happened on there. We don't know the full story of what happened. Maybe he was sitting in the ship waiting. He was keeping the engine running or something. And something, at some point he makes his way over to what was going on with the witches, and maybe the Sith were there too. I don't know. There's this next episode just is going to be so hingeful. My
guess is if he was on Brendock, I think he'd already left the order and probably out of things. Now, granted, a scar of that size on a adult male, if that was on a child, it would have shrunk quite a bit. So I don't know if that was just for visual evidence or if he got it a little bit older. But it's possible he already got kicked out of the order or already left before Osha was brought in. So it could be that he wasn't affiliated with anybody and was already there. And in that case, I think that would be more aligned with he had already met up with his master or under the tutelage of somebody of the dark side.
Yeah.
And was there for a purpose. So I'm kind of leaning more towards that angle, but how we get there, I'm with you. It's a lot to jump through, and they've got to give us more to really get anything solid, I think, in that space.
Yeah, and I don't like the Vernestra Rowe being the master of him if he was a Padawan.
I don't like that either. Yeah. I mean,
not really.
I see why you draw the two together, but yeah.
And I don't, the other part of it, just to kind of continue to poke holes in some stuff here, there's that one, I forget now if it was in the second episode, where Vernestra says, "So why didn't you tell me what happened?" Like, it sounds like she was never a part of what happened on Brendock. Like, she might have been aware of it, and she might have gotten the report, and then she might have covered up some things after she found out. But I do believe her that she was never there. And so to say that she was there and that's the same time when he got his scar kind of thing, again, I'm not saying anybody's leading to that, but it's real easy to start kind of trying to pull all this stuff together and make it, stick. And I don't think that's probably possible either. So,
yeah. And again, the kind of lead being buried is with the mission that he gave May to kill these 4 Jedi Masters. Was it because of her experience to drive her to the dark side? Or were they part of his own retribution in some way?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the question, because it seems like it would be very much more focused on May and Osha in that respect, not Chimere, but Chimere knows about it through some means or whatever it might be. So I don't know that he even has to be there at all, but he's been able to learn the details of all of this as they have researched and found something special about Osha and May, however they may have done that. So I don't think it necessarily means that he has to be there, but it could be that he was there and that's how he got the scar. And it's not from Vernestra in some way too, but
yeah,
a lot of things they're gonna have to tell us, because it's difficult to really definitively put it one way or the other. Even you could speculate probably 7 different ways.
Dale says, I don't think he was her Padawan, but she might have fought him over something that happened with his master. Yeah, possibly.
And it could have been, honestly, it could have been accidental in some way too. That seems unlikely with someone of Vernestra's skill, but accidents do happen when you're wielding a lightsaber.
I didn't see you behind me there, buddy. Sorry about that. It'll heal up. Don't worry.
Right.
Okay.
We've got this newfangled thing called Bacta. It's great.
Yeah, it's great. The kids love it. So she says, why did you even bring me here? He says, leverage. Everyone does seem to want you. I thought that was a kind of nice little line there. And then Osha's,
him.
Yeah, even him in different ways. Osha thinks that Sol will come to find her. And he says she says that he's that powerful in the Force, and he challenges that by saying, "No, that's your power." My interpretation of that is that he says that it's her power that allows him to find her, right? Because she's so powerful, she's kind of like this beacon, and so it's easy for him to kind of lock on, sense where she's at, where she's thinking in reverse, and that's the first time you can see it in her eyes. Like, and she even asks us a little bit later, like, "What did you mean by that?" Right? But he does say someone ought to teach you that again. Mm-hmm. Just leaves it to, let her think, giving her food while he says that as well, right? So more diffusing of, the whole situation. And
what
let's not think about the people we just killed. What's that?
Yeah, what you need is a teacher.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like some, odd parallels or hard parallels going on here.
Right. Oh, we also did confirmation that he did not force heal Osha.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, we didn't touch on that at the top of the episode, but yeah, she was bandaged, blood still obviously coming through, so there was no force healing going on. So we're able to clear that one up.
Yeah. Okay, we're back in the Khofar orbit, and this is where we get the old oil in the eye gag that happens there. I don't know. Don't get bent out about that if you didn't like it. It's just a fun little piece, and if you didn't think it was fun, then just don't think about it. Move on.
What else is a little droid going to do to a person?
I know.
I mean,
yeah. With no body, it's just got a head. I mean, he's doing whatever he can do. She factory resets him. I did like that his eyes turn red, like C-3PO's eyes turned red when they kind of rebooted him as well.
I didn't even recognize him with the red eyes.
Yeah, the red eyes. And then she kind of clamps him on to a new body a little bit later, which that plays into, I think, some of this a little bit with Soul. Back to the stranger's dwelling, and this is where she says, what did you mean by, my strength? And he goes into the whole thing about, she's saying, look, as a Jedi, I've been taught if I don't practice the Force, it, atrophy kicks in. I start to lose it. We've seen examples of that. We've talked about that so many times on this show. And he says, yeah, that's the Jedi way. Like, that's what you've always been taught. That's the only thing you know. But there is another way to find out. And it involves getting connecting with your emotions. And he starts going down this whole, like, I thought he was going to just regurgitate all of Yoda's lines, but he talks about
right.
anger, fear, loss, desire. And she says, those are the paths of the dark side, which he says, semantics. Like, is he wrong?
Well, I mean, from his point of view, right? I mean, it's just
Sure.
all using the Force. And
Right.
why would you limit yourself of what you had at your disposal to be able to use and give you power to accomplish whatever you want to accomplish? So,
Which is the main argument of the Sith. Like, it is strictly in their code. I mean, it clearly says it in their code.
right, exactly.
Yeah, so I thought this was great stuff, great writing, the way to kind of turn this around on her, really challenge a lot of her beliefs, those things that she was indoctrinated with in terms of, as part of being, as part of the Jedi Order. Really enjoyed this little exchange here. But then she kind of does have this moment of like, wait a minute, time out. You murdered my friends. Like, this is the elephant in the room. Like, you were giving me food, showing me your parts, doing whatever you need to do to get me to come over. But you did kill my friends. And, and he challenges that. He's like, what, Yord, he turned you in kind of thing. He doesn't go into the other stuff like, oh, well, he did kind of, come to your aid.
Right, he backed you up whenever it wasn't you.
Yeah,
Or
he
it
doesn't say
wasn't-
that.
Yeah, right.
But, she's very emotional at this point, so why bring that up? And then he talks about Jecki, and she's like, well, what about, she says, Jecki. He's like, yeah, but, really, that's going to be a one-sided relationship, just like you had with Master Soul. These guys are Jedi. They don't really have friends. They don't really, go and do stuff together. There's no kind of emotions or feelings. They're all robots. That's really what he was coming from. Like, I think he was challenging whether or
You're
not
not
she
like
truly had a relationship with Master Soul as well.
Yeah, you're not like them, is basically what he keeps saying. He's like, the things that you want are not what the Jedi are going to be able to give you. And why do you keep going back and trying to pursue that? Because it just doesn't make any sense. You want to make these connections with other people, but you're doing it with people who are unable and unwilling to be able to do that and will always abandon you if you try and when push comes to shove, right? And this is kind of like what we see with the tension in the High Republic too, with Elzar Mann and Avar Kriss about duty versus, your relationships with other people and what should you do? What should you not do? What's right and what's wrong? And again, this goes back to truths and lies for the Sith. Of he's giving truths to her, but they're all very limited and narrow in scope as to what he's trying to get her to think about. Like you said with Yord, Yord was someone who genuinely cared about Osha, but also was doing his job at the same time. And he omitted all the other things that maybe he would have done or could have done for her that would have been positive and been a good colleague and a friend. And the Jedi do have friends. I think that's the other thing. And Chimera might be jaded in that respect of wasn't there long enough or maybe didn't form those kinds of connections that you can have lasting friendships with Jedi. The Jedi call each other friends in many cases. It's not,
Look at the firebrand.
yeah, it's not uncommon, right? I mean, it's relationships are important. It's just not at the expense of doing your duty, right? Is the whole idea. But again, none of those are worked out for Osha. So it's really raw prime, real estate to be able to camp out and be able to sow these seeds of doubts that all the things you want, you can't get from these people. So don't try. I'm offering you anything you want. Like literally anything you want is right here. And you don't even have to ask for it. You just take what you want to do and go for it.
Yeah, and I don't think he had that same kind of approach with May at all. Like, it seems You know,
Right.
especially with what she says a little bit later. Or she says it now.
He calls it a mistake, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Like she didn't want the same things I wanted, is what he ended up saying.
Right. I think that's where I think even from a Sith, you evaluate acolytes, you evaluate potential apprentices. They have to, Bane was doing this back in the day. You have to be on the same path and have the same objectives, even if it's going to be a power struggle at some point. That's okay. That's how we work. But we are all moving in the same direction, and our heart is in it because we want to further the Sith. And I think from Chimere, it's unclear that he wants that part of it, but he definitely wants this part where he feels like he has a bond and a connection to walk this path with somebody at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's a question for you of, do you feel like he's walking the path of the Sith, or do you think he's, for lack of a better word, just desperate for companionship?
Well, again, what I will say
they
is
can go hand in hand, I suppose. But
yeah, they can, I think, and you're not like the conversation that from what I've heard from you and Mike. I don't disagree with anything you guys are saying. I think where this delineates itself from other traditional Sith is the motive.
Yeah,
like the motive with May was truly about power. It was about corruption. And when he says she didn't want the same things I wanted, or we didn't want the same things, she was looking for her sister, right? That's it. And so, yeah, she was going to go through these tasks. And I think that's why he gave her these tasks to really kind of challenge. We talked about this again, I think it was in the Q&A, the Patreon show, that he was giving her these tasks to really just vet her out, to make sure that she truly was in this for the same things that he wanted, which was passion or power, right?
Mm-hmm.
With Osha, the same thing applies. Like, I think he still wants power. I think he still wants to he says he wants to do his own thing and have the freedom to do, practice the Force how he wants. I think if he's truly is a Sith Lord, we all know where where that logically goes at some point. But it does feel like the intent here, or at least the motive, is different, because I think it is coming from a physical, passionate relationship that he wants from her. So yes, does he want just a friend? Does he want companionship? Yes. But I think it is steeped in passion, like the desire, the seduction himself. There's something about her that he's attracted to, even though May looks exactly like him. They're totally different people, right? And we saw that very clearly in the second episode. So I think he's still going through all the same stuff, I guess. He's still doing all the same stuff that you would expect the Sith Lord to do. But I think for him, like the end game is like, okay, we can be, lovers and have everything that Sith Lords have. That rule of two is still a rule of two, but two become one kind of thing, right? Which, again, going back to the article, that comes at, yeah, I know. I posted that today, by the way. I posted a little GIF of the Spice Girls doing that. But anyways, so I think that's kind of, I don't know if I answered your question or not, but that's what I'm thinking. Okay, he says, we just talked about this, why do you love people that can only go so far, who can't go as deep as you can, right? Again, playing up on hey, you're much more mentally mature. You've got all these emotions that people that no one can reciprocate in your life right now. She says, I'm not my sister. I'm not that easily corrupted. And he walks outside. He just kind of leaves it at that. When she goes out there, this is like now phase 4 of this whole seduction kind of thing. She says, he says, you stayed here to do something. Do it. Right. And she still has a lightsaber. And as she's holding the lightsaber, he walks up to it, puts a lightsaber to his chest. At one point, he reaches down and grabs her arm, like forcefully, right? Making himself completely vulnerable. And I remember watching this the first time, and I thought, oh, okay, he's pulled the kyber crystal out. There's no way he's, got a kyber crystal, and that's just kind of reckless and foolish to do. Turned out not to be the case.
Nope.
He says, you stayed here to do something. He said, do it. He didn't say it like Palpatine, but he did say do it, which was a nice little line there. And then he says a Jedi doesn't attack the unarmed. This is where he grabs her arm and says, why do you still think you're part of the Jedi? They didn't want you. And then I thought, wait a second, how the heck? One, how does he know what happened? But then this was really kind of a wrench in a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about, because I think we've at this point have honestly believed that she just walked away. I think it was very plausible, very feasible. You could see the emotion on her character's face when she talked about this stuff. It was unsettling to discuss. And so why wouldn't she have just walked away from the Jedi Order saying, hey, this isn't for me. I can't wrestle with these emotions. I'm not getting anywhere. My training's sucking, whatever the case may have been. But to hear this was kind of an eye-opener. This is kind of a revelation in a lot of ways, because now we understand that she did kind of get kicked out. It aligns with Vernestra, or not, with Indara, Remember, Indara was trying to get her out, like I forget the line now. I think it was in the second episode or whatever. But Indara wasn't exactly happy that she was coming on and was trying to, say, hey, there's something not right here. There's kinds of warning signs type of thing.
Right. Yeah. She says she failed. I mean, and she, again, the emotion, the passion all finally erupt out of it. He just keeps pressing it. Like, they threw you away. Like, and they threw me away too, type of thing. Right. And trying to make that connection with her, but also trying to finally just push and press enough to where she finally just has enough, and the truth has to come out. And like the Sith say, the truth will set you free. I mean, paraphrasing quite loosely, but basically those truths are what's going to finally release you and let you claim what's yours. And she takes the saber and puts it right up against his neck, ignites it, and everything starts coming out, right? There's no holds barred now. There's no governor on what's going to be able to, what's going to restrict information from coming out and learning about what happened. And yeah, it was very surprising that she failed. And again, part of the exit from the Jedi is basically you turn in your lightsaber, right? So some of the stuff beforehand, if it feels really good to hold it again, you could tell why maybe she would miss it a lot more too, because if she had to give it back, we knew she gave it back willingly, or we presume that. But under these circumstances, it feels all the more painful to be able to do that when you know that you didn't succeed. And part of why you succeeded has been blaming yourself, because you feel like you've not been able to adhere to these Jedi principles, where a Chimera is basically just telling her, look, if you failed, it's because the Jedi failed you, and because they didn't allow you to fully express and tap into the Force in the way that you are meant to, in the way that you should be able to. And again, that continued seduction of just feeding her the things that she needs to hear in order to truly open up and realize her, in his eyes, her potential.
Yeah, this is there. I mean, it parallels a lot of what Palpatine says to Anakin, right?
Yeah.
And challenging him and saying, like, they don't know you, you're capable of so much more. It's a shame they're not promoting you, right? All that just playing into that. Definitely the seduction of the dark side there. He does question whether or not she left the order. And, based on what we talked about, again, on the Patreon show, go listen to that if you're a Patreon member, or sign up to listen to it, because I thought it was really, I think we did a pretty good job. But, I do wonder, like, how much of that is a blur? Like, we talked about potentially Soul having gone through and wiped out memories, right? At one point, I started thinking, I'm like, wait a minute, what if he went further? What if he did like some kind of Force suggestion on her that she needed to leave the order? Like, it wasn't of her own will, but they didn't want to kick her out. And so somehow, he got inside of her head and said, you want to leave the order. And she said, I want to leave the order. And so there's kind of blank spaces and holes there where, he knows the truth, but she doesn't, kind of thing. Or maybe she suspects there was something there, but she just can't really put her finger on exactly what happened. Whatever it was, a lot of emotion came out, like to your point. I mean, the fact that she suddenly ignited that lightsaber and threw him up against the wall, that was like, not expected, number one. But two, I think it certainly plays into exactly what he's talking about. There's a lot of baggage there. There's a lot of emotions that she's still carrying. She's certainly not reconciled these. I thought she had, but it clearly is not. It's still pretty close to the surface. It didn't take long to get it out of her. But that's what he goes through. He says, what you're going through right now, this anger, this pain, this is who you are. The Jedi saw it, and that's why they threw you away. She says, they didn't throw me away. Then why aren't you a Jedi? Why aren't you a Jedi, Osha? Like, he's questioning her. And she doesn't seem to know the answer, right? She says, all she says is, because I failed. But I don't know that she honestly believes that either. The way she said that, it almost sounded like she was just saying what she had been told, what she had been conditioned to think, right? What she had made her, what she had told herself to kind of reconcile a lot of the emotions, and certainly that experience of whatever happened to her, which, I don't know, I guess your thoughts on that. And do you think we'll ever really truly understand? Like, is that going to come up in episode? I don't think it's going to come up in the flashback episode. Maybe, maybe not. But it feels like this is maybe something that gets carried over into the final episode if we ever do find out the truth on that.
Yeah, I think this will have to have some sort of resolution to it to understand what it is. I think the thing to really focus on, though, is that Chimera is staying calm while he's being enthusiastic about, like, do it, like, take, just give in to feelings, right? And express yourself. Throughout this entire, like, all of these scenes in this episode, he's very calm and collected and not judgmental. And when she does lash out, it's almost like you can almost hear him saying, it feels good, right? It feels good to finally express yourself in the way that you've wanted to for 16 years, from the moments when your mothers were killed, to all of your challenges with the Jedi and how they've abandoned you and all of this, and you're finally letting it out. Doesn't that feel good? And to know that I, Chimera, am not going to judge you for your actions. I'm not going to yell at you to stop before you take his head. If this is what you want to do, so be it. That's what you should do. And I mean, and just to be accepting of it and be open to it. And it's almost like a foreign language for Osha, because she's not used to someone not ridiculing or judging or giving guidance or saying you're doing this wrong. And again, that those failures you were talking about, it could be that those types of things, like the way she was going about them wasn't right. Maybe she didn't fail the test or fail the trials, although I think there was probably something in there. Maybe she wasn't doing them in the way that she was supposed to, or that would have made her better. I'm really curious if she made Night or not. I'm assuming she never made Night.
Yeah, I didn't get that impression, but
yeah, it kind of seems like she probably failed the trials or just wasn't ready for the trials, and maybe that's her failure or whatever. But all these things holding her back. But again, Chimera's just basically saying, all the things you've been holding back, you may have failed the Jedi because they failed you. They won't fail over here in this space with me.
Yeah. He does kind of end this whole little scene here by saying, I lost everything. He says, but when you lose everything, that's when you're finally free.
Yeah.
So,
and she's experiencing it firsthand, right?
Yeah.
It's probably the most alive she's actually felt in a long time, not hiding in the shadows or hiding as a mechanic or trying to scrap some piece of life out that feels meaningless and worthless compared to maybe what she thought she had.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly right. Back to, I guess, Coruscant, and Mog says he's got the team ready. Vern is in her kind of field dress uniform, so she's heading out there. He says, you get nauseous when traveling through hyperspace. She says, I don't get sick. I find it unsettling. I know a lot's been talked about here.
It's a good callback to the books.
It's a callback to the books. I'm not going to name any names, but there's somebody out there that's made a hate video about this episode, and they go in like at least 2 or 3 times talk about how this person, like Vernestra, had motion sickness as a Jedi, and making fun of it and talking about how stupid this is that someone would have motion sickness. Clearly, they've not read the books. And the argument to that is, well, I shouldn't have to read the books to understand what's going on. This is called an Easter egg.
Yeah.
And many times, they're not going to explain it because it's not there for you, but don't dismiss it as something being stupid or trivial when there's actually a story behind it. And the story, for anybody that has not read the books and you want to know what that line means, whenever Vernestra is traveling through hyperspace is when she has these force visions. And sometimes she doesn't like what she sees, right? Sometimes they're very unsettling to her. And she's always, at least in the High Republic, the first couple phases now, she's talked to other people about this because it is unsettling and she doesn't like what she's seeing. And I forget one of the books, they were like, go get into hyperspace. Go see if you can figure out what's happening. And she's like, no, I don't want to do it. She doesn't feel comfortable with this, unfortunately, kind of thing. So that's the callback to it, and that's really all it is. And so if you're a High Republic fan, you're like, oh, that was awesome. That's really great. I can see where somebody would be like, oh, it's a silly comment about, I get motion sickness. And that's really not what it was about. I do understand where people can take it that, but what's that?
That's not what they said anyway.
Yeah, I know. It's not.
Unsettling doesn't
unsettling.
mean motion sickness.
Yes, you're drawing way too many conclusions there with the word of unsettling. Anyways, I thought it was great. I loved it. And she says, basically, I got to handle this personally kind of thing. But I think, again, that's coming from a save your own butt kind of perspective. I mean, I think she's doing it for the Order as well. I think they kind of established that they don't want the overreach of the count or the Senate or the Republic going any further than it is already right now. And so she kind of wants to put a squash to that. Yeah. But at the same time, given what we know of the events and how she could be implicated in some of this stuff potentially, yeah, I think there's a part of her that is like, I need to take control of this, and this is why she's jumping onto the Camtros ship and heading down to Khofar to figure all this out on her own. Yeah,
and Leslie Headland alluded to, like in one of these future episodes, we're going to see kind of a mission gone wrong, which of course we know is going to be probably the flashback, right? So these types of things will all make more sense when we piece them all together as a big picture.
Yeah. So we reconnect with Sol and Osha. This is Basil. He's kind of sneaking around the ship here. He asks, so he doesn't sense, he's not really he says he's talking to Osha and he's talking to May, and he's talking about how, I didn't really sense him at the time, he talks about what was going on there. And the entire time he's doing that, I feel like he's talking about himself. Like he's talking about, I didn't sense you kind of thing. Right. Mm-hmm. And she says like, how could I have not seen it? And she says, well, we see what we want to see. And I think he totally knows. Like, I think I think this is part of the test. He's trying to see what her reaction is by saying, oh, I didn't detect your master. And then trying to see like, oh, does she pick up on that? And am I going to get a clue that, I don't suspect her, or maybe I do suspect her kind of thing. And then he goes into this whole thing about Pip and the way he took care of the droid. And she seemed very cold. And I think that was like, okay, that's it. That's confirmed it for me. You didn't even really make any kind of comments about Pip after I said how much, you loved him and you cared for him. And she talks about how I don't know if she was talking about from her perspective or Osha's perspective. Maybe it's both, but she says, I had to lose a lot of myself in order to become a Jedi. Even if I didn't know it at the time. He does say sorry. And then suddenly, he says, I'm going to tell you everything that's going on. And the power comes back up, which I know this is what you said bugged you a little bit.
Time number 2. Yeah.
But of course she walks off, and that's when he comes up behind her and stuns her because the gig is up at that point.
Well, yeah. And she was going to report. What was she doing? She was going to report him, like just try to call for help or what?
I don't know. I didn't really get a sense of what she was trying to do there. I mean, she got onto the transponder and was going to do something.
Right.
But she was calling it in is what it sounded like.
Yeah. And then it was odd that Soul went and turned it all off later on too, right? He just like, okay, I was trying to call for help. Now it's, nope, not going to call for help. We need some one-on-one time to hash this out or what? It was a little bit surprising that he went from like, it was a little difficult to follow what his motivations were there.
Yeah. I think the way I gathered that was she likely was going to check in with, Vernestra or the council, whoever it was. And I think in Soul's mind is like, he's doing exactly what Vern is doing. Like, I can't, we're on our own, right? I got to take care of this myself. We have to find the master. We've got to find Osha. And if I call this in, if I allow Vernestra to show up, she's going to pull rank and whatever else. And it's like, no, he just wants to deal with this. He wants to contend with this. And so I think he stuns her because he knows who she is, but at the same time, he does not want them to give away his location or anything else, or give away what they're, what they were planning on doing or whatever at that point. So I think that's where it was coming from. But we'll see. Let's see. So this is, we go back to the Khofar surface. So this is where Mog, they finally land as Soul takes off, right? Vernestra's ship, the Camtro shows up, and we jump immediately to the planet side there where Mog is talking to the locals. We saw them in a couple episodes ago. They learned that there was an Umbra Moth colony that potentially could have killed a bunch of Jedi. Vern says, maybe, but she wants to know more. And so they go, of course, head out to the battle scene.
I was so relieved that they went down and still saw the bodies. I was like, there's no way we're going to explain this away with Umbra Moths, right?
Yeah, right. We'll get to that here in just a second. I had that listed as the dead speak. No, they don't. Unknown planet again. And this is back in the dwelling. And so he's kind of making these repairs on the helmet. Osha asks if that's what he said to May. She says he made a mistake, or why didn't you stay with May? Did you go through this whole thing like you did with May? This is where he says that he made a mistake with her. He says, I thought she wanted more than just revenge. I thought she wanted what I want, the power of 2. And I took a couple lines out of there, but I think we pretty much talked about what that means, at least from his perspective. I think it means more than just the true power of 2 or the rule of 2. I think he's like, let's get in bed, honey.
Right.
And then this is where we see the scar where she says, looks like someone stabbed you in the back. He says, someone who threw me away. And she says, your Jedi master, to which he doesn't answer. Like, he doesn't respond on that. And so I think that was smart because I think it leaves it open. It could be a Jedi master. It could be his Sith Lord. It was smart not to answer it. I suspect we'll get an answer to that at some point, though.
Yeah, it goes back to the Sith aren't necessarily going to lie to you, but they might only tell you the truths they want you to hear.
Yeah.
So is it curious that it's an omission, or he's just like he's wanting her to believe her own things? Sometimes the story you make up in your head is far better than anything that he'd be able to tell. So he's already got her questioning and doubting who this might have been and what the Jedi might be capable of. There's no need to answer it. There's no need to confirm it. Allow her to just go ahead and dwell on that and just think it over and search her own feelings about whether she thinks that's even plausible. That she even mentioned it. It was probably him saying, that's a win.
Yeah. There he changes the subject quickly. He's like, "Oh, hey, look, cortosis, huh? Kind of cool. Let's not talk about my master."
Yeah, handy against Jedi, handy against lightsabers.
Handy against lightsabers. He talks about the deprivation effect as well. He says, like we use as younglings. I'm like, oh, right. Okay. So he's got he's got the inside track, at least on what's going on there. He said, so it's just you and the Force and what you bring with you.
Great callback to the cave on Dagobah.
Yeah, it's the callback on Dagobah. This is cool. I mean, there's little stuff like that I did enjoy it. But she says, I don't trust you. And he says, yeah, you're right. Nor should you, right? You should learn to trust yourself. Again, challenging a lot of things she's been told, and certainly entrusting her with things that she's probably never thought she was capable of doing. Like, I don't think that, the Jedi don't talk to people this way. They do. They go about it in a different way. It's just that open brutality, honesty that's coming out that shit's really kind of putting her on her heels. She walks away. We get the music playing there as she's looking at the helmet, and there's a humming that's happening too. I don't know if you picked up on that. I don't know if that's coming from the helmet itself, or I don't know, maybe the dishwasher came on, but there was something going on. There's some kind of humming noise when she's looking at the helmet. I don't know if that means anything, because I don't remember hearing that later on when she puts the helmet on. Yeah, I don't recall hearing that.
I think it was just for effect. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Maybe it is a dishwasher.
But we see like the cortosis vine in the background, or the vein rather, in the background. So clearly this planet is rich in cortosis, or at least has something to mine and extract. So it makes sense why the Sith layer is here. Yeah. As well, and the correlation with the helmet and why he's able to do repairs on it as well.
Yeah. So we get Yord and Jeki. That was disturbing. Back on Khofar, seeing their dead bodies. Everybody was like, "Hey, are we going to get a flashback? Are we going to see Yord and Jeki?" And I posted something today. I said, "I love when Star Wars does cute little cameos and like this." And I put the dead body faces on there. But it didn't go very well.
I was say Albert giveth and Albert taketh away.
Yeah. There was, and as they're walking around there on Khofar, we could hear all the images. You could hear all the voices and of what was going on. I couldn't tell if that was Vernestra picking up on that, or that was Mog. Or maybe it was just like used for like a
effect,
a narrative effect, storytelling effect.
I'm wondering if it was really just for that, but I think it's almost like Vernestra, and it wasn't similar to like what Quinlan Voss has, right, with psychometry.
Psychometry?
Yeah, but it was something along those lines where you almost get something so serious and bad has happened that it has left an impression. This is kind of like the cave on Dagobah and some other areas too, or maybe even the planet that Luke visits that has Elzar Mann on the planet in the comic books. But something happens and there's such an impression that happens that it resonates in the Force in these places, and so someone very sensitive in the Force or in tune with it could almost hear these echoes of what happened, and that seems like it was what was going on. So I presume that was Vernestra. Mog was looking at this more from a analytical perspective of what he could see, the evidence of what was suggesting. Now, granted, he was pretty on the money from some of the things he was recapping there, but
it was like Star Wars CSI kind of thing.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was like NCIS and it's CSI, and they're just kind of you got what was his name, David Caruso's character, just be able to figure everything out just by pulling his sunglasses down. But I like that Vernestra is that in tune with it, that she was able to kind of get these echoes and pick them up and to piece together what was going on, and that she challenged Mug, like, you tell me what you think had happened. And this is where it was a little unsettling for Vernestra, of where you're not really sure if she is being 100% truthful and honest and doesn't have ulterior motives here, because when Mog does give his assessment of like, these are lightsaber wounds, clearly, what Jedi would have been powerful, she almost leads him on to the answer she wants to hear. And then it's like, whoa, that's quite the accusation there you've got there, saying it's soul, I mean, that's like a classic villain move in CSI and things like that, of like who the actual villain is in the story. And I'm like, oh man, is this going to are we going to set Soul up now? Is this really the direction we're going? Are we going to go that path? And is Vernestra the person to kind of go, lead us down that direction? And that's why I started to get real uncomfortable about where this was going.
That's cool. I didn't consider that. I'll need to sleep on that and think more about it. But I see what you're saying, and I can totally see it. I picked it. I read that scene more, or her questioning, what do you see here? Not as a learning moment kind of thing. I mean, you could maybe say it was that, hey, you're the young Padawan, tell me what you see kind of thing. But I think it was more, I read it more as, how obvious is this? Like that something really bad happened? Could we chalk this up to like Umbra Moth or, cover it up in that regard? And when he starts going, oh yeah, they were all killed by a lightsaber. Some powerful Jedi has fallen, I can't remember. He says, one versus many. There was a battle, an explosion. And she's like, oh, okay, crap. Never mind.
Where did you get the one versus many though? That's the part that I was like,
well, I think
wow, how'd you draw that?
Yeah, maybe it was the way that at one point they showed like the bodies were all kind of laying in, maybe they got like they kind of fell over within a few swift strokes of the lightsaber. I don't know.
Maybe so.
I'm being an apologist here for it, but yeah, like I think when she was, thinking that, she's like, okay, this is terrible. And then when she said, it could be, do you think Master Soul? I read her face as being like, no, that's not possible kind of thing. Like maybe not 100% believing that, but like that would be her worst fear, is that somehow Saul had done that. Like it's not out of the question until she finds out why Saul. I mean, he's certainly done everything suspicious already by turning off the transponder, not being there when they got there. She has no idea where this guy's going. I don't even know if she's going to even have contact with him at this point. But I think she's thinking, okay, that could be a possibility, even though I really don't want to think about it, because that's even worse now that we have all these fallen Jedi and they want to do this investigation kind of thing. And I've got a Jedi who's fallen suddenly on the run, with potentially two other kids, because I think they did mention that neither May nor Osha were found as well.
Right,
but still not thinking Sith. Still not thinking Sith.
Well, and no reason to.
Exactly.
Well,
no, that's my point.
Vernestra might be sensing something else. But again, also though, Mog does bring up, well, why would he have called for help though? If Soul did this, why would he be calling in a code 0 or whatever to request help and report this in? Like you wouldn't want to be found, right? You wouldn't want to send a message to anybody, especially since he's been a Stark ally. For Vernestra specifically, I think they seem like they're friends.
Yeah. She says something to tip the scales, which is what she said to Soul when she suspected there was something else at play, something larger going on, right? Something ominous and looming. Was that just her repeating the line because, this reaffirmed that she was right? Or do you think there's something more laced in that?
The part where I went to, I had an Albert moment and I was like, maybe Chimere said this something to her at 20 years ago or something, that there would be something eventually that would tip the scales and things would be different. And why she would have said at the beginning of the series, though, and said it again, that, poking holes and all of this stuff is really easy. But to me, it was just like, it was almost like a recalling maybe of her own voice, but at the same time, maybe there was something else that triggered in a memory that she does recall that someone said, and maybe it was Chimere that said it to her in whatever moment happened when he got the scar or whatever. It just seemed like there was opportunity for those things to be connected in some way. And she was like, oh no, like something truly bad is happening, because this might be a revenge stroke of something going out. I mean, clearly it's revenge already, but but something else that she hadn't really considered that truly is going to tip the scales in a way that she didn't think was actually possible. She thought maybe more politically, but now this is more like the balance of the force might be tipping.
Yeah. Yeah, that was kind of my read as well. I'd like to think there was more there, especially since she said it twice and in that moment, but it feels like it's just more of kind of like, hey, my first hunch was right, or, what I felt was reaffirmed here with what happened.
I'm going to go that she's quoting Chimere. I'm going to go out on a limb.
Okay. All right. Go with it, man. Let's see. She does say we should prepare these bodies for burial, which I think I said out loud. See, shut the what up, just let us watch the rest of the series in peace, because I know some people were so upset she didn't do anything with the bodies, and we said they will. It just in the character moment when you watch this stuff, it's not something he would have taken care of then. There was too much going on.
It was curious though that Chimere didn't go back and see if they had done it, but again, there's reasons why you wouldn't do that. We did get the light whip though too. We didn't mention.
Oh
that,
yeah,
so.
I forgot to mention that. Which
it was kind of cool that she blindly whipped an Umbra Moth in half.
Yeah, it was cool. Like her using it, seeing it on screen more than what we saw, although it wasn't that much more. It was cool to see her kind of the way she retracted it back into the hilt.
Yeah, pulling it with the Force like Yoda did in the prequels.
Yeah, that's right. She pulled it out and it kind of floated into her hand. I guess it was unfortunate. I hope that's not all we see of it. I don't think it is. I do suspect that we're going to have, at least in my head canon, which is not saying much at this data. I do want her to fight whoever the master is, like some kind of ultimate confrontation, because that would be really cool to see her go up. And unfortunately, I think she would lose. Like, I think she would die if that actually happened. Yeah.
She's going to give him a scar to match his apprentices.
I'm going to do to you what I did to your son. But yeah, that would be kind of cool to hopefully see that. But it was nice to
Soul
see.
steps in. That's my son.
Okay. This is why you're not writing and you're here with me tonight.
Right.
Okay. May wakes up. She's on the bound to the table. Soul standing there. He's watching her. Says she's not going to hurt her. Says, I will. Or she says, I'm not going to hurt you. And she says, let me go or whatever. He says, I will. Believe me. We have a lot to do. We need to find your master. We need to save Osha. But first, you and I are going to talk. I've had 16 years to think about what I would say to you if I ever got the opportunity. So you're going to listen, kind of thing. What do you got 3 up for?
Third time.
Third time. Yeah, sorry. Sore subject. Did this seem out of character at all for Soul that he would have done this? Or is it just because, look, I mean, it feels like he wants to talk to her.
Yeah.
He doesn't trust her. Right. So I think the natural thing would be to, I don't know, incapacitate her.
You already stunned her. I mean, you might as well, restrain her at the same time, make sure she sits there and listens.
Yeah, maybe.
And again, I think for Soul, it's also, if she is restrained and can't go anywhere, I can't go anywhere either. And I'm actually going to force myself while she's out, come up with how do I want to say what I want to say. And then when she comes to, we're just going to go right into it. And we're going to get it all out there. So I think this is just that tipping moment for him, right? Something to tip his own scales, so to speak, of finally coming clean to someone, even though it's probably not going to make it to the High Council. Rest in peace, Soul, here in the next couple of episodes, I guess. But yeah, it's got to come out to someone, so someone knows the truth. And by God, if we don't get the whole truth after all of the 5 teases so far, I'm going to blow a gasket. But we're going to get that in the flashback. I feel comfortable with that, and this next episode is going to start to peel back those layers and give us some of the answers that we're looking for.
Yeah. I think it's fine. I started thinking about how would he find the master? And Soul seems like, I wouldn't say he's unhinged. He's not unhinged. I mean, I think he's pretty much got himself together, but I don't know. Do you think there's any possibility, I'm thinking, how would he get to the planet that they're on, right? I'm assuming, so first of all, let me back up. Let me back into this. Now that we know this planet exists, and it was the planet, I think from the article we talked, and from the Leslie Headland article with Collider and Maggie Lovett, she confirmed in there that this planet was actually first shown at the very end of episode 1. I had said that maybe that was Oleg or whatever the name of the planet was.
Yeah, Oleg or Ueda.
Whatever it was, that one. It turns out that was the first time they saw it. So I started thinking, well, how would they how would they find Osha and find the stranger? May knows, right? She was there. Would she give up that information willingly or not? And I thought, if she doesn't, do you think there's a situation where Soul goes, I'm going to just dig it right out of your mind? Because that seems to be his go-to. He seems to be powerful enough to do so.
Oh, man. Is he capable of doing it? Probably, yeah. I think that's probably not an argument. I think he's going to tell May this story.
She's going to come around and be like, let's do this?
Well, I don't know if the story will inspire her, but I think she still wants to save Osha and have a relationship. That's her motive. That's her driver. Mm-hmm. And so anything to do that. And if she can use Soul to interfere with Chimere while they get away, I think she's all for that. She doesn't really care if Soul lives or dies, even after the story. I think she might have a little more understanding behind all of it.
Yeah.
But expecting sympathy or empathy or anything like that, I think is probably still a long shot. But she's willing to say, okay, you're probably not as bad as I thought. Let's go get Osha. But if it becomes between saving Osha and saving you and getting out, sorry, Charlie, I'm out, and she doesn't necessarily have to say any of that, but I think that's the perspective that she'll bring to that. And it seems to make sense, right? That's her objective. That's her sole driver right now. And that's why she wanted to betray Chimere in the first place.
Sole driver. Nice. Nicely done.
That was actually intentional. I'm glad you caught it.
There's that scene that was shown in one of the teasers or trailers, whatever it was, TV spots. Remember I mentioned where he's grabbing somebody's black hand and says, "Are you ready?" Like they're getting ready to go do something. Maybe maybe they finally get her to come around and he's just telling her, "Let's go do this. Let's head over to the unknown planet and save your sister," kind of thing.
That's right. Cue heroic music.
Yeah. Montage time. They got to train for this, by the way, before they head out there.
Oh, that's right. Have to reassemble Pip.
Yeah, that'll be the montage.
Basil gearing up.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Don't get me started. I'm excited about that. Next episode will be the flashback for sure. And then it feels like whether or not I want to go back to what you said, whether or not they wrap things up and we know the definitive truth about what happened on Brendock in the next episode, maybe not. Like, I wouldn't, like, it may just be another perspective. And then finally, when we get to the final episode and everybody's together, maybe then all the truths come out. I don't know if that's really going to be the case either, because it feels like we're not going to have enough time to kind of lay all that out, right? Especially if we got everybody heading to this unknown planet for some kind of final ultimate showdown thing. But
right, and that wasn't Leslie Headland's intent. The intent was to close the story so that it felt like it was contained and you found resolution for the things we have to have resolution, but that doesn't mean that every question is going to be answered.
Yeah.
And there will be some that linger out there. There'll be some that are a bit ambiguous and debatable, right? So we know maybe how the twins were conceived is potentially one of those things where we might have to figure out how we feel about each of the stories and see how we feel about it. But the things that need to happen to actually close the story will happen. But we're going to have a lot of open-ended questions that we'll be able to, kind of recap at the end and maybe explore our own journey about where we think why one is true and one's not.
Yep. All right. The last scene, we go back to Osha, and she's looking at the Sith helmet. She walks over to it. This is where she sees the Crotosis vein that's on the side of the wall there. This is where you hear the Kylo Ren music playing very, very slowly, but it's playing every single note by note. By the way, in that article, they talk about the merging of that music plus the Kylo Ren theme. She puts it on. We get the callback to, it's hard not to see Vader getting the helmet put on in Revenge of the Sith. And then we get her breathing, which I thought was all kind of cool. I liked all of that. This was
really cool. I mean, just the darkness with just the slits and then closing and even her breathing as the credits come on. I think this was a really nice touch.
I did. I enjoyed it. I joked that the visibility in that helmet has got to be the worst of any helmet. Like, far exceeds the worst, like the visibility from like Phase 1 Clone Trooper helmets. It's even worse than that. But it is kind of cool to think that, man, that guy had that helmet on and did all the things he did in the last episode, right? That is like crazy in tune with the Force, because there is no visibility. You can't see anything at all. Was there anything moving? Like, it looked like stuff was shifting, and I thought, okay, maybe that's just the camera blur or something that's going on, or was somebody approaching her?
I don't think I saw anybody. I think it was just...
Did you listen to the audio description?
Yeah, there was nothing there.
They didn't say anything? Okay, that's fine. It confirms it then for me. All right.
Just that it was dark in the slots, and then it faded to black.
Yeah.
But it was a great imagery, though. I mean, this was unexpected, and I was really glad they gave us the inside view, and you just hear the echoing of your breath. No different than if you were to put a helmet on, and if you put any kind of helmet on, this is exactly what it is, and you can feel very claustrophobic. You're breathing, it gets really hot, it gets really humid, like all those types of things. But all that's left, I mean, it's a weird experience to wear a helmet for anybody that's done it, like a full enclosure, because you really do feel like you are completely isolated, and it's you and your thoughts, and you are actually disconnected from everything around you. Even if there's someone standing right next to you, you feel very disconnected from people around you. The deprivation part, and only the stuff that you have with you in your mind. I mean, you could see, and they did a really great job of giving you imagery to support all of that. So I think this was really cool.
Yeah. Well, that's the last part of it. I mean, I have a billion questions, and I'm going to save some of these. We'll save them all, honestly, at this point, because we need to wrap up here. But Sunday, when we get to the Patreon show, there are a lot of questions I think this particular episode introduced. I've got some questions around the helmet that I want to touch on. We may get into some of the more of the article, some of the little kind of trivial pieces that I think are still in there that were fun to talk about that didn't really necessarily need to make this episode. But don't forget, between now and then, if you have questions, you're watching this, throw them down in the comments. We'll collect those, put them on Discord, social media, however you want to send them to us. Get your comments or questions out there so we can answer them on Sunday's show, and that'll get you eligible to win one of the Acolyte posters as well. So lots and lots of things to still discuss and theorize, especially going into these final two. So,
yeah, it's really cool. And I wanted to give a special thank you to all the people who came out in the live stream tonight. Music Train, Sky, Steph, Alex, One Up versus CPU, Trent, Jenny, Fisto Fury, Devin, Katya, Skywalker's Academy, Reader Reborn, everybody in the background. Thank you so much. If you're listening to this, thank you so much for downloading the episode. We hope you enjoyed it. CantinaCast.com/YouTube if you're curious. CantinaCast.com/Patreon if you'd like to check out our Sunday shows and our special Patreon content. Again, this Sunday, probably at 9 or 10 p.m. We'll see what the schedule plays out, but Sunday evenings are our day. And of course, those are out there for video as well as audio. So depending on what tier you're at. So you have a little of something for everyone. So I hope you're enjoying all of that as well. And Hardcutter sliding in there at the very end.
Got to get his props, man. Got to get him in. So, all right. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Leave whatever. Even if you don't have a question, you got comments, leave them down there. Be happy. It'd be fun to read those as well. And for those of you that are on Patreon, we will see you guys on Sunday. Jonesy, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Nope. Take care, everyone.
All right, guys. We'll see you here in just a few days.
You're still listening? Wow. That's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.